Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. 042424, whatever. Uh, Reggie Bush in the news today, getting his Heisman back. Does that mean that we could see some other pieces of history turned around? We'll talk about that. And we're talking a little NFL draft, not 2024 NFL draft, but 2025, as we haven't even gotten to the current draft and already thinking about the next one. All of that here in a minute on the Big Me Kickoff, brought to you in part by our great friends over at No Naturals. Let me tell you a little bit about them. I'll bring up a scroll in a second. And of course, the notes, the link, all of that in the show notes. So be sure to check them out. Are you ready for an entirely different edible experience? Welcome to No Naturals, where we're shattering the stereotype of one-note, slow-acting gummies. Forget waiting over an hour to feel the effects. Our gummies are like a sprinter out of the blocks, fast-acting in just 15 to 30 minutes. Picture this, you're not choosing a flavor, you're choosing your vibe. With 5 core experiences and 6 custom combos, you're in full control. Whether it's energy and focus without the crash, a peaceful slumber that lasts all night, or a game-changing burst of bliss and euphoria, these edibles are the real deal. And the best part, you don't need a doctor's recommendation. No Natural gummies are dispensary quality and discreetly delivered right to your door. So whether you're craving a productivity boost, a good night's sleep, who isn't, or some blissful euphoria, say hello to No Naturals. Try them today and use code HUDDLE10 for 10% off your order at shop.nonaturals.com. I'm bringing in the scroll right there. Little testimonial. I am not only somebody who reads about these products, I use them, and I cannot recommend them highly enough. Check them out, shop.nonaturals.com. Well, the unthinkable has finally happened, and the Heisman Trust has decided to give Reggie Bush back his 2005 award. That story was first brought to you by Pete Thamel of ESPN.com. Want to give credit to a friend of the show. Pete Thamel does excellent work. And we have already started to see how this story is being made local. Obviously, Reggie Bush was found guilty, not in a court of law, mind you, but was found guilty of impermissible benefits, housing, what have you. Not here to relitigate any of that stuff. A lot of the things that Reggie Bush was dinged for are now legal. See where I'm going with this, don't you? So history now is changing its view. Reggie Bush is getting his Heisman back. What does this mean for the 2010 Ohio State Buckeyes? Remember, that was the last year of Jim Tressel at the helm for Ohio State. Ohio State would go on and face and defeat Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl. And then you had a situation of where players were suspended, head coach Jim Tressel was suspended, and it all kind of fell apart. 2011 turns into the 1 year of Luke Fickell, and then 2012 is Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes, who are still paying for the sins of their predecessors, and the 2012 Buckeyes ineligible for the postseason, ineligible to compete for the Big Ten championship, to go to the game. Even though Ohio State is, I don't think it was East-West at that point. I think it was Legends, Leaders. So Ohio State does have a trophy for winning its side of the conference. I think these are two separate issues, whether how you view 2010 and how you view 2012. I've said, maybe not on the show as much as I have on content over at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and you should be checking us out over at BuckeyeHuddle.com while you're at it. Best place for all of your team coverage, recruiting coverage, great community. Cannot recommend it enough. Check us out at Buckeye Huddle. It would make me very happy. But let me kind of remember where I was going after I dropped a little commercial in there. I think that NC2A vacating wins is kind of dumb. Now, of course, people are going to be like, yeah, but you think that the NC2A should come in and hammer Michigan. That's a side issue. I guess if it's, yes, we're vacating wins or we're not vacating wins, I'm probably more in the mindset of not vacating wins. It's over. It's done. Got the T-shirt. You got the memory. You're not really going to remove it. But they went in and they wiped out all of those wins for Ohio State during that time period and have created a gigantic mess when it comes to people like myself who have to write about all-time records and things of that nature, because you don't know which websites are going to follow that and have the vacated wins taken off, which ones aren't. I'm not one to want to go through and count 105 line entries to figure out what the hell is going on. I'm not here to really relitigate the Tat Five, if we're being honest. And I do have a statement from them that I'll post here in a second that is on social media for those of you who are not on the socials or have a meaningful day job or trying to land a plane or perform surgery or something like that and have, don't get to sit on Twitter all day like I do. But this is, these were players that got punished for selling their own trinkets. I know that's kind of a very loose term to use for gold pants. I mean, especially since gold pants haven't been handed out in a couple of years there in Columbus. I don't mean to minimize it. Rings, MVP trophies, whatever. And get tattoos or whatever. I mean, we're talking about a land prior to NIL. Hell, we're talking about a land prior to really cost of attendance being figured into the equation. 2010, Jim Delaney, still commissioner. We're still hearing the same speech about laundry money, getting laundry money when I was a student athlete at North Carolina. If we're going back, we're not saying with Reggie Bush that these things did not occur. Apparently, we're just saying it is no longer a barrier from being honored. None of these impermissible benefits really show me a direct cause and effect of, because of this, he was better on the field. I mean, maybe there was a better place for his family to live, but I don't think that's going to necessarily change how he was going to perform. He was the best player in the nation that year. Getting a fresh sleeve isn't going to make you a better football player. At no point were these players, they were not selling merchandise for steroids. They were not selling merchandise for body enhancements in terms of, actual physical attributes. They were just getting some ink. So vis-a-vis, is this a case of where, and we're talking about two different entities. We're talking about the Heisman Trust making a decision about the Heisman. It is the property of the Heisman Trust, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, versus the NCAA, which operates in its own path. But let me jump out of here. Let me throw up this. The affirmation of NCAA athletes' rights to make a living from their name, image, and likeness is a huge step in the right direction. Armed with the correct resources and support, we know they'll show what we felt to be true all along. Not letting athletes capitalize on what ultimately is their hard work was unjust and unnecessary. Now that fundamental right has been granted to a new generation of athletes, now they finally have the freedom to share in some of the millions of dollars in revenue they generate for their coaches, their institutions, their conferences, and the NCAA as a whole. We would like to see our hard-won accomplishments reinstated. Although this could never undo what we and our families endured for breaking rules that shouldn't have existed in the first place, we believe reinstating and acknowledging the accomplishments of ourselves and our teammates would be a huge step in the right direction. The 2010 Ohio State football team earned a 12-1 record, won a Big Ten championship, won a Sugar Bowl, produced a top 5 career all-time passer, Terrell Pryor, a top 5 career all-time receiver, DeVere Posey, a top 10 career all-time rusher, Daniel Boom Herron, and an All-American, Mike Adams, all for it to be wiped unceremoniously from the record books. We're calling for our school records and legacy to be restored so that Buckeye Nation can look at us with the same love and fondness that we've always had for them. We look forward to one day telling our story and the Tat Five forever being a legitimate part of Ohio State's glorious history. Sincerely, Terrell Pryor, Devere Posey, Solomon Thomas, Mike Adams, and Daniel Boom Heron. What are your thoughts on this? And again, and we'll talk about 2012 in a second because I have a little bit of a different view there, one that may not be as popular. I've been sitting on this for a couple of hours. I had a couple of other shows I needed to do. I had a couple of other chores I needed to take care of, but I haven't really been able to sit around and think about it. And so often when I do this type of show, I come in cold and I think about it and I formulate my opinion while I'm talking to you. So you're not getting something that is pre-prepared, something that I've gone through. I have a page of notes. I haven't written any lines. I don't pre-write lines. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to get them with a zinger. So we will get into that here in a second. But as for the 2010 situation, I think that Ohio State should push for reinstatement. I do. I understand that in the day and the age of quote unquote the crime, and that is a gross overstatement of what happened, of the crime, these things were against the rules. As silly or stupid or meaningful as you felt that the rule was at the time. But it is no longer the case. We do see in a much larger and more meaningful arena than college athletics, we do see pardons come out for people that were convicted of stupid rulings and laws and back in the day, people that have been long gone for 20, 50, 100, 200 years. So it's not as if this is completely unprecedented. It's not as if this is completely unprecedented right at this very moment as Reggie Bush is getting his Heisman back. But we are dealing with a different entity. And then, of course, everybody's going to want to sit there and talk about how, well, this penalty shouldn't have been enforced and that penalty shouldn't have been enforced. I'm not here to legislate any of that. I'm here to talk about the 2010 Buckeyes. I'm here to talk about the Tat Five. I'm here to talk about this awful, regrettable, unfortunate black eye on Jim Tressel's resume, a Hall of Famer at all levels that he was involved in. So I don't think we're really out of the realm of being reasonable of saying if we view some of these rules of eligibility due to impermissible benefits, why are we not looking at this? Wouldn't this be a great situation for outgoing AD Gene Smith to push for this over his last couple of months at Ohio State? And I'm not saying he can necessarily get it done. And Gene Smith is one of the most well-respected and powerful ADs in recent history of AD-dom. Is that a word? Probably not. But of AD-dom. So if he can't push it through, I don't know. And especially since he was AD during all of this. I mean, it'd be different for Ross Bjork, who was not here, obviously, at that point to push for all of that. But for all of these things of Gene Smith's legacy, if he could go back and right the wrongs of 2010, I think that would be huge. And I'm not here to say that these 5 players, they made bad decisions at the time that were impacted by an even worse rule. Puberty, I guess. By an even worse rule. So these players have paid enough of a penalty. I mean, Terrell Pryor was disassociated from the university for a significant amount of time. When we have discussions about players of over the last couple of decades, we don't talk a lot about Boom Herron. We don't talk a lot about DeVere Posey. We don't talk about Mike Adams. We don't talk about Solomon Thomas. Solomon Thomas, I will always have a memory of Solomon Thomas on like a, dropping back into coverage from his in position and having quote unquote a big man's dream with the defensive touchdown. So I think it's time. At least kick the tires on this. At least give it a shot. I mean, social media certainly seems to agree, at least from the Buckeye side. The players have sounded off. I've not followed Jim Tressel's Twitter. I just don't think that Jim Tressel necessarily would get too involved in this. That's just not his style. But I think that now is the time. We are 13, 14 years removed from these issues. It is time to look at it with a sensible eye and say, all right, this was an overreaction. Time served, and get on with it. Now, the other part of this, and again, you're watching me here on the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, Wednesday, April 24th. Thank you for watching. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, all that good stuff. If you're listening on any of your favorite podcasting outlets, write us a 5-star review. That helps us with our distribution. All of that helps. Be sure to tell a friend. And, of course, sign up for BuckeyeHuddle.com. Got a lot coming up here in the coming weeks. I promise this is the time to be on board. Now we move to 2012. And a lot of people are like, well, Ohio State should be deemed national champions. Ohio State was 12-0 and was robbed of its opportunity to play in the Big Ten championship game and the BCS championship game. Yes, and I don't know. Ohio State did go 12-0. And I'm not even going to play the game of, does Ohio State play tighter along the way if it has something to play for more than a Big Ten Leaders Division crown? We'll never know the answer to that. You just can't go back in. You can't plug it into a simulation. You can't put it in an AI. None of that's going to be able to figure that out. But Ohio State did not have those additional 2 games to play. Ohio State probably made a misstep in 2011 by not taking the bowl ban, saying we will not participate in a bowl that ended up being the Gator Bowl, the Tax Slayer Gator Jacksonville whatever bowl, which ended up being a loss to Florida, securing a 6-7 season. I am still of the mindset that Ohio State probably would have gotten a 2012 ban as well. Oh, you're trying to circumvent us with a team that is in disarray. Well, we see right through you. We're not going to accept that. But that's all moot. But if we are now saying that the punishment that Ohio State received from 2010, in retrospect, maybe should not have happened. I mean, certainly from today's standards, it shouldn't have happened. And Ohio State shouldn't have been banned. I don't think that the omission of playing, and I'm not even concerned about the Big Ten championship game, whatever, that it is what it is. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me of who Ohio State would have played. If you want to put it in the notes, that would be greatly appreciated in the comments. But let's take that game off of the board. But Ohio State would still have to play a BCS championship game somewhere in enemy territory, because all bowl games are in enemy territory if you are a northern team. Ain't nobody winning the national championship in the Pinstripe Bowl or the Fenway Bowl or the famous Potato Bowl. All these games of consequences are in the South or the West. I just think that might be too big of a leap. Now, there is a day and an age where there were 8 national championships. The AP and the UPI and, the Tuscaloosa Touchdown Club and the, American Meat Packers Association. Everybody had its own damn national champion. And I'm sure you could find some metric out there that if Ohio State were deemed eligible for this, that, and the other, that might have Ohio State atop the book. I just don't know. There are a lot of people that have an issue claiming the 1970 national championship. I think more people would have an issue claiming the 2012 national championship. I think sometimes you can't unring a bell. And that bell rang, and you just can't unring it. Now, it would be a lot more fun for me to be able to write about the crowning of a new champion, a new old champion in 2012, and the bump we would get from all of that, and certainly the amount of hate we would get as people writing about Ohio State over that type of situation. But I feel comfortable in my position of saying 2010 in that spot, the record should be reinstated, the win should be reinstated, all of that should be removed. But I can't move forward with 2012 and say that has to happen. Now, if you dyed in the wool believing that should happen, that's fine. You do you. I'm not going to debate you in the middle of the oval and shout you down because I think you're just insane. I just have my issues with it. I just have the reasons why I don't believe it should be the case. That doesn't mean we can't be friends over this. It just means that I don't agree with you. And I know that we live in a country, a non-functioning country, where disagreement is not allowed. But we're better than that. We're better than that. And we can disagree on it. And if you got a couple of beers in me, I would certainly be like, yeah, I get your point. I see it. But I just stone cold sober. I can't get to that. I can't get to that point. So 2010, yes. 2012, no. We're going to round out the show talking a bit about the NFL draft. Went longer on that segment than I thought I would, but it's fine. I'm not going to go long on this segment. Join us on Friday. Time to be determined. We will go live. I will take all of your questions, at least the ones that I can get to, or the ones that I can repeat. And we can talk about what we talked about on Monday, or we've talked about here on Wednesday, whatever. Friday, time to be determined. I would say 1, 2 o'clock Eastern, something around that range. Not sure yet. I haven't scheduled it. That's why you need to hit the bell so you don't miss a single episode of the Big Me Kickoff, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, Buckeye Weekly, Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, any of the great programming we put here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. I want to talk a little bit about the 2025 NFL Draft. 2024, not exactly exciting Ohio State fans. Marvin Harrison Jr., top 5 pick. Michael Hall, late 2, probably a mid 3. Everybody else, somebody else could sneak into the 3rd. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, that was just what a reach. But I think everybody else is going to be day 3, rounds 4 through 7. Let's move past that. We're going to see the 25 mock drafts starting to come out about Saturday night, Sunday morning. Have a couple of friends who are draft experts. That is what they do. That is how they make their living. They cover the draft. That is 100% their focus. This isn't a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month run up, and then they go on to, selling refrigerators. This is their job. And I know that they already have these 25 drafts, and you generally drop them after the 24 is done. Now, I did find one 25 draft. I found 2. I found one that was so horribly wrong. One, I'm not going to name the outlet. And it's not a main outlet, so don't worry. It's not like, oh my God, I can't believe CBS did this. No. But it was so hysterically, horribly terrible that I was like, I'm not even going to talk about this. They had a player going in the top 25, picks in the first round, who isn't even a starter at Ohio State, isn't even being talked about in a starting role for Ohio State. Maybe the draft is a year old. I don't know. Not here to judge, even though that's all I'm doing is judging and mocking that draft. Mocking the mock. I've used that title before. But the other one I found was from Walter Football. And I've used Walter Football for years. Now, I have found other outlets that I prefer more. It's not like I felt that Walter Football became worse. I just feel that there are other outlets that are better for what I'm looking for as a draft aficionado. But they have 4 Buckeyes in the first round. None of them named Jack Sawyer or JT Tuimoloau. Now, they do have somebody on the defensive line. They have Tyleik Williams going 15th. They have Denzel Burke going 23rd. They have Jordan Hancock going 29th. And they have Sonny Siles going 30th. So 4 Buckeyes in the first round. None in the top 14. See what I did there in order to fit 15 in there. None in the top 14. I think that it's going to be a remarkable draft for the Buckeyes based on just the sheer number of players that are going to go to the combine and then are going to go on to the draft. And if you're trying to plan, you want to go and cover an NFL draft and you're not going to be in Detroit this weekend. Green Bay, Wisconsin, 2025 draft. I covered one in Chicago. I could see where fans would have a good time. It's a lot of work for media to cover it, a lot of schlepping around. That's what I get paid the small bucks for. Now, if you want to drop in a super thanks to help with the 2025 NFL Draft Fund, who am I to say no? Who am I to say no? But I think 4 may be a low number. And here's the thing. We can't necessarily figure out, I mean, what happens if Will Howard is the starter and goes nuts and has just a gigantic year? I mean, he's going to get up there. What happens if it's Devin Brown? Whoever Ohio State quarterback is has to be considered. Has to be considered. This is a strong quarterback draft in 24. Who are your 25 front runners? Quinn Ewers. I don't know. I mean, there's some names of players that are coming draft eligible, but they haven't proven anything to me yet at this point for me to sit there and say it's this guy. I mean, I think you can sit there and look at Dylan Gabriel up at Oregon. There are going to be some names of quarterbacks that kind of emerge. Cam Ward at Miami. But this is not as deep of a draft. So I think Ohio State quarterback has to at least be considered there. Running back is a position that has been downgraded through the years in terms of their draft capital. But I could see Trevion or Quinshon. I could see one of them being a late one. We haven't mentioned Emeka Egbuka in this group, and Emeka Egbuka was being mentioned as potentially a late one if he would have come out. We have 2 of the defensive backs in that mix. I think that that's fair. I mean, what do we see beyond that? I mean, is Davison Igbinosun, is he, where does he stand at this point? If Ohio State's secondary is as locked down as we think it is, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see 3 first-round Ohio State defensive backs. I don't know if Lathan Ransom is necessarily going to be the guy that translates as a 1, but he has certainly been a huge part of the reclamation of the BIA titling for the secondary, best in America, for those of you who've been taking the Rip Van Winkle approach and sleeping. So I'm not going to be the guy who's going to say Ohio State's going to send 7 of 32 in the first round. That's aggressive. That's aggressive. Other teams have players and footballs and helmets and scholarships too, and there's just and the reality is that you're going to see more quarterbacks go in the first round, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, even if it's not really a strong quarterback draft, just because that's the need. Quarterbacks and tackles. But 4, 5, I mean, if Ohio State is responsible for 20% of the first round, people are going to quickly forget about this 24 draft maybe not being one of the strongest ones in terms of high draft picks. And this is on the heels of Marvin Harrison Jr. likely going top 5, likely being the highest ever drafted Ohio State wide receiver becoming the 6th in the top 10. Garrett Wilson started off the list, and then you go back through some all-time greats, and nobody had been higher than 7. So 4 is better than 7 in terms of this argument. But I think this 25 draft is going to be something very interesting to keep an eye on. And I'm looking forward to the 2025 mock drafts coming out and writing about them and maybe laughing at one or two of them. I don't want to do this. I don't want to write about it. People could be like, well, why don't you put one out, dummy? That's not what my job really entails. I don't know anything about that offensive guard from Troy. I don't know anything about, this guy at UTSA. I mean, that's not my purview. So it's more often than not, I'm not laughing at exclusion of, well, you forgot Emeka Egbuka. What are you doing? I laugh at inclusion. What the hell is this guy doing on the list for? Have you seen 4 games that I haven't of him? Because he's not an NFLer. But we'll have plenty of time for that. But we've crossed the 30-minute mark. I want to thank you for hanging on all the way through the show, if you have, or if you jumped in somehow late. I don't know how you do that on a taped show. Be sure to go back and watch it. I want to thank our friends at nonaturals.com. Remember, use code HUDDLE10 at shop.nonaturals.com to get dispensary quality gummies delivered directly to your door. That's a lot of D's in there. I had to kind of work on that one. But until next time, our live show on Friday, 1 p.m., 2 p.m. We'll see. Keep it locked in here. We'll let you know. Once you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you very soon.